95.7 The Game in San Francisco. And joining us right now, we've been talking about this appearance all day. Roy Wood Jr., he's a Birmingham, Alabama native. He's a stand-up comedian. Last night, he was the sideline reporter at Rickwood Field, part of Major League Baseball's network coverage. Also, formerly of The Daily Show, he was a correspondent there. Hey, Roy, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys. And let this conversation be proof that it's not just sex talk happening in Twitter DMs. Sometimes there's business being negotiated.
All right. Well, let's talk about some of that business. Can you describe the environment and the atmosphere last night in Birmingham at Rickwood Field?
I think it was jovial. You know, it was definitely somber to start. You know, it was to be a celebration of Willie Mays' career, and it ended up being a celebration of his life. I think beyond that, you know, it was just a sense of unity. I was in the booth with MLB Network on Tuesday for the minor league game we had there. And when they announced that Willie Mays had passed, you saw strangers crying, and then the next thing you saw was strangers hugging. And that was a beautiful thing. And to me, that's not just a testament to Alabama. It's a testament to the spirit of baseball. And it's a testament to just how well people... We've really underestimated how much, how can I put it, how unifying the sport of baseball is, and what the spirit of Willie Mays has been able to do for that. And, you know, it was beautiful, man. Even the food was good. I played high school baseball at Rickwood Field. Let me tell you something. Hands down, Rickwood might be the oldest field with the worst hot dog.
Well,
we're talking 94 dogs at Rickwood. Oh, my friend. Oh, no.
Well, they put in a food court. It was my understanding, a nice food court. They also built temporary clubhouses too, right? Correct.
They had they had it set up two different ways. They had an outside pavilion area that was kind of like a state, like when your city closes off 3 blocks and puts a stage downtown and brings somebody who hasn't sold an album in 10 years, and you go stand out in the heat. You know the vibes. It was that all around the outside, like every stadium now that has the outside area for the fans who just want to be outside, right? And then on the beyond the outfield wall was an entire ecosystem of showers and clubhouses and air-conditioned tents and VIP booths. And you see part of it with that Willie Mays pavilion that they kept showing, which is the original batting cages for Rickwood Field, which they just retrofitted into kind of a VIP tent. But like, I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen a tent city and storage container cities that, like, only when I did USO shows in Iraq have I seen something more intricate than what I saw set up at Rickwood Field.
Interesting. Roy Wood Jr. joining us on 95.7 The Game, formerly of The Daily Show. He was a correspondent there. He was also at Rickwood Field last night in Birmingham, Alabama, doing sideline reporting.
Well, Roy, I was going to ask you about your favorite part from the event, but now that I think about it, not many people have as intimate of a knowledge both of Rickwood Field but also just of Birmingham as someone like yourself. I saw you tweeting about, an unlikely candidate to have Not Like Us as their walk-up song. Like, what was the most shocking thing that you saw at the event yesterday or throughout this week?
I'd say the most shocking thing that I saw throughout the entire week at Rickwood was people in a football state sitting down and watching baseball, which proves that there is some degree of love and appreciation for baseball still in this country. In the state of Alabama. I don't think it can be really understated how much MLB did to renovate that field and to leave it in a place where because high school teams that don't have a field use Rickwood as their municipal home field. I played 3 seasons there, and I think the only thing MLB is taking with them is the Jumbotron and the lights. They had to bring in extra lights because those lights at Rickwood, I don't think the wiring in those lights hasn't been good since segregation. So they got to get deep up in the walls and really lay some new electrical cord. But I'd say probably the most surprising thing was just how communal and just joyous it was. Like when you really think about Birmingham, if it's not football, we ain't gathering for it. If it's not music, we ain't gathering for it. So to see people just gathered and just mingling and just hanging, like the vibe, like, you know, when you go out somewhere and you can tell who the out-of-towners are.
Yeah, we're from San Francisco. We know that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Y'all know because we're complaining about the breeze while y'all just soldier through it. Like, this summer is so cold. And you're like, shut your face, tourist. Like, why is everything locked up in the Walgreens? Look, do you want lotion or not? Stop crying. Like, the idea that so many people from so many places, I was speaking with people and I thought that they were like, oh, where in Alabama are you from? And this guy's like, I'm from Sacramento. They showed up and showed out as well. Let me tell you something. Giants fans were there. They were there early. I forgive me for not remembering the woman's name, but the first black woman PA announcer for the Giants who recently left the organization.
Renell.
She came to the game. Renell was at the game. Partial standing O from all the Giants fans. So the level of appreciation still for the sport of baseball, you know, it wasn't lost. So, you know, you had people who were there to celebrate Willie, and then you had diehard baseball fans who were there to watch a good-ass game of baseball. So, you know, it was a good time. I hope it's something that MLB figures out a way to do every year, you know. To answer the question, I guess, in the shortest way possible, there was one Negro leaguer there, the oldest one, the Reverend Bill Greason. Bill Greason played for the Birmingham Black Barons on their last black Negro League World Series team in 1948. Bill Greason, then he also served in Iwo Jima, and he spent the last 40 years or so as a pastor in the Birmingham area. I interviewed him. We had a podcast that we did just covering the history of Rickwood, 4 episodes called Road to Rickwood. And Mr. Greason was one of the people that I interviewed, and he told me a month and a half ago he was not coming to the game. And it wasn't so much about an anger at Major League Baseball for this, you know, day in the sun to take so long to come, but more about the idea that I really think a lot of these men, there is trauma that they never got to deal with because as soon as they left the Negro Leagues, the Civil Rights Movement started. And so once they had a moment of quiet and calm, like someone like Mr. Greason, he found solace in religion. So to bring him back to this place that has so many great memories, but also so many bad memories, I could completely understand why he wouldn't have wanted to come to Rickwood. And when I looked out there and I saw the smile on his face as he was standing there with men who I know for a fact he has not seen in decades, because Bill Greason, he's not gone to any of the reunion stuff that like whenever Kansas City has the thing and, oh, we're going to honor you over here at the thing. No, thanks. I got church. So to see him there, that was beautiful because it's like you're watching someone make an attempt to still remember what was good about something that was just very, very terrible.
Well, Roy, I did listen to Road to Rickwood in NPR. It's fantastic. I recommend everybody go out and listen to learn more about the field. But one thing that was a part of it was a lot of the, you know, you mentioned the trauma, but it was never aimed at their own players. For example, Willie Mays never felt it, from what it sounded like, you know, the jealousy of players that were older that didn't have the chance to go and play in the majors just because they were beyond their primes and the opportunity wasn't afforded to them. Obviously, it was a celebration of Willie Mays after his passing. I'm curious, though, is there anything that you learned specifically about Willie Mays through, whether it's the podcast or just from being a part of the event, that you didn't know before? And could you kind of share with our audience here in San Francisco what your lasting memory is of Willie Mays?
So Willie Mays, for the people who don't know, I'm sure your audience does, though, his first professional hit as a paid baseball player came at 17 years old for the Birmingham Black Barons. At the time, he was still in high school. And Piper Davis, who's a player manager for the Black Barons, he was one of the people that was integral in recruiting Willie Mays. And also in and around that team was a young man named Al Holt. Al Holt would eventually become a Black Baron himself in the 60s. But he was the bat boy. And he just talked about the focus that Willie had, even when he was facing 40 and 50-year-old men. I'm sure you heard the last night the story about Satchel Paige, because he got mad that Willie hit a double off of him. Bob Kendricks from the Negro League Museum, president of the Negro League Museum, told the story of Satchel Paige at Rickwood telling Willie, "I'm going to throw 3 fastballs at you, and you're not going to hit any of them." And before the 3rd fastball hit the catcher's mitt, Satchel Paige told Willie, "Go sit down, little boy, and don't hit me like that again." And Willie said, "Yes, sir." So, it's. I think what Willie Mays means to the people of Alabama. I think people really forget that. Most of the time when you're talking about the state of Alabama, especially Birmingham, you're talking about how terrible it is, and to grow up in Birmingham, we're always talking about how good you still have an opportunity to be in spite of what was. So when someone, quote unquote, makes it to the big time, we celebrate you because you're proof positive to everybody that's still living in that space that you can do it. We're talking about a man that grew up less than 2 miles away from where Bo Jackson would come to dominance. So it's possible to be from Central Alabama. It's possible to come from poverty. It's possible to come from nothing if you work hard and focus and you're just kind to people. And Willie Mays was exactly that.
We're talking to Roy Wood Jr. He was part of the telecast last night in Birmingham at Rickwood Field, former Daily Show correspondent. Can I assume, Roy, that you heard what Reggie Jackson said during his interview with Alex Rodriguez, et cetera?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I heard that.
Well, that's one of the pieces of last night that's going to live for a long period of time. Just what Reggie said. What were your thoughts when he was, telling it as straight as he could?
It's with regret and shame. And the thing that I think that's very horrible about the things that Reggie was forced to, unearth is that if Reggie Jackson is still alive, then the people who denied him a meal in a hotel room quite possibly are too. And the thought that type of horror is not that long ago. It's one of those things where you hear the story, and I think it was very important because as much as you want this night to celebrate the Negro Leagues, you kind of need to acknowledge a little bit of just how heinous and terrible it was. Again, in the podcast, and I don't even think this was the podcast. I think this was the vignettes I did with Harold Reynolds. We spoke with some retired Negro leaguers, and they were telling us stories. Al Holt was one of them. And they were telling us stories about how when they were on the road and if a hotel denied them, sometimes they would sleep in a nursing home. Sometimes they would sleep in hospice on the floor next to a person who is literally dying. And you would do that for a 5-game series and then eat your food on the bus because no one will let you sit there. And so to see these gentlemen finally having their day in the sun, finally getting attention from MLB, finally having their statistics elevated, it was way overdue. And that was really one of the more through lines through a lot of the retired Negro leaguers that I talked to, is that a lot of them just felt like all of this was too late because they've lost so many friends and there's so many people who they wish could have been there with them. Mm.
Well, Roy, another feature that I saw you on, I think it was with Fox or MLB Network, was speaking with these Negro League players, but it was also you just listen to them talking ball. Like, what was it like to hear stories from players back then and just talk about the sport and the appreciation for what they were able to do as athletes?
The fact that you could taunt people as a fielder, we need to bring that back, bro. The fact that Satchel Paige could literally just tell people, he told the outfielder to sit down. I know I'm going to strike this guy. Sit down. Matter of fact, everybody come gather around the mound. He just brought the infield and outfield in and set them around. And it's like, this stuff sounds like just Paul Bunyan tall tales. But then the more you hear people and you just see the casualness with which they say this stuff. The original dimensions of Rickwood before they did the redesign in the 80s, Rickwood was 405 down the left field line, 480 straight away, 440 to right. And people were hitting the ball over that fence. We're talking 500-foot home runs. And this is before muscle milk and weight training and trainers telling you leg day. There was no leg day in the 1940s. You worked at a steel mill and you banged steel. And if you bang steel long enough, a baseball ain't nothing.
Hey, Roy, we have on our particular show, we have this little thing where if ever we have a guest on or a listener calls in and they do what we call a humble brag. You know what that is? We play this sound effect. Take a listen. It's like a drop, like you're dropping a name. All right, so you said you played 3 years at Rickwood Field. What'd you hit there?
130, maybe. I'm trying to think. I like even my greatest play in high school baseball history was a road game. That didn't even happen at Rickwood. That happened at John Carroll. Bases loaded, RBI, walk-off strikeout. If you wonder.
Attaboy. Well, you know what?
I don't know how you score that.
Well,
but he walked it off my strikeout. It hit home plate. It went to the backstop. And I used that 7.340 speed that God gave me.
Hey, 405 to left, 440 to right, 480 to the center. I can't imagine there were a lot of power hitters.
Yeah, so it was a pitcher. It was a pitcher's park.
Yeah, I mean, in my high school days, they played 400 last night, but in my high school days, it was 415 straight away. Like it was like neck and neck with Enron when they used to have the flag in center field.
And the tilted,
Tropicana or Orange Juice Park, whatever it is, they had the flag out there. So I saw a lot of great baseball players, and none of them got called up to the show. Other than, I think the only person I played against who got called up was Russ Davis to the Mariners. If I'm not mistaken, Russ went to Hueytown, and he tomahawked a couple out on us, but I mean, it's interesting because especially going to a predominantly, I played baseball in a predominantly black school district. Birmingham City, every city school is at least 80% black. So if you're black and you're good at baseball, you're probably good at another sport that offers better scholarships and has better boosters paying you stuff under the table. So I just never really saw anybody who saw through with their baseball gifts, to go all the way to the top.
Well, Roy, I do want to kind of wrap up here. You mentioned, making this an annual thing, and I do want to kind of dig into that a little bit. Where do you think that this can go? One place my mind immediately went to, well, if during the Negro Leagues there was a lot of barnstorming teams, they played in different locations, they essentially toured. So why couldn't Major League Baseball do the same thing next season and honoring different geographic locations that were a part of the Negro Leagues? What would you like to see beyond this season?
The baseball purist in me would love to see something affiliated with Major League Baseball every year at Rickwood Field, just with the respect to the cathedral that it is. Even if it's not honoring the Negro Leagues every single year, I think a nod to what baseball was, I think it always happened there. I think you could do... It's interesting because you could do a throwback game, but if the field isn't throwback, it doesn't visually it doesn't hit the same. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like even last night, one of the best details about the game to me last night was that when I played in high school, that wall was wooden and those signs were wood. They had, when you're bringing in outfielders making $30 million guaranteed, you got to put pads up there. But they also painted the pads to make them look wood. There's an aesthetic feel to the ballpark as a whole. I think if you barnstorm all over the place, I think you have to work to find fields that kind of honor the small and intimate feels that those games were originally played on. The game they play in Iowa is very intimate. I would even argue the Williamsport Little League game. That's an intimate field. So I think without really, I don't know, once you get into 38,000 people all shoved into something modern, do it at a AA park or something. Like I tell you, the next team I would want to see celebrated for the players that came through there would be the Indianapolis Clowns. You know, if you go back and watch footage of the Clowns, they describe themselves as the Globetrotters of baseball, which they 1,000% were. They were all over the place with just like behind it, like no look passes and pickoffs, sitting in chairs in the middle of center field, like daring you to hit the ball to them. And, you know, like that. I think that part of it would be very entertaining for a lot of kids and people to see. But you know, I don't know. That's a tough one because if you do it in Birmingham every year, it becomes like some sort of a tribute, I think, to Willie Mays, and I think that would be cool. But then there's part of me that goes, well, you know, there was some great teams in Kansas City too, and 48 Barons lost to the Monarchs. So, you know, I think you would want to pay tribute to, like, you know, some greats like Rube Foster and stuff like that. So, you know, it's one thing Major League Baseball has, if they've proven nothing else with Rickwood, they've got money to put down grass and nice signage anywhere. So they can do it. But I think going forward, as much as we can, to honor the people that have made contributions in the past, any way we can celebrate that, even if it's with an all-star game, if you do the Futures game away from the all-star game site, you know, maybe that's an option, you know. You could do the home run derby somewhere, you know, but I know they try to keep all of the all-stars in one place. Buddy of mine and I, we talked about, you know, maybe you do like a vintage, like I would still love to see Ken Griffey take BP.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be nice. Hey, Roy, thank you so much for joining us, man. It's just unbelievably informative and entertaining. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you all. Thank you all for having me on. It was a pleasure and an honor when Major League Baseball asked me to kind of join Harold Reynolds and JPV and, you know, and Michael Mays, Willie's son, to just be in conversation about the sport and the history of the sport. And I've loved this sport since I was in the first grade, and to be able to be a part of a discussion about the history of it as it relates to, you know, the economic empowerment that it brought to my hometown, you know, is a pleasure.
Sure. Well, good luck to you, and love talking to you, and hopefully there'll be reason to talk more to you in the future. Thank you so much.
Done deal. Talk soon.
All right. That's Roy Wood Jr., Birmingham, Alabama native, stand-up comedian. He did Sideline last night at Rickwood Field. He was part of the MLB's network.